Um, all right. Well, welcome everybody to this Zoom. It's been quite a while since we've had the last one. We've had our heads buried deep in code. But as you know, this one is going to discuss in minor details about the security audit and the procedure that we're moving forward with that. Some of the results that we have. We're not going to name any specifics too clearly, just in the case that some of them, even though they may be minor things, are just not something that could potentially cause problems for users. So I guess we will start off with kind of running down the list. I mean, overall, it was a pretty successful audit. They made mention that our code quality was very good as well. They were very impressed with that. They were happy to see that compared to a lot of other ones. It was easy to read, easy to follow. And from their vulnerability assessments, it was, a couple little things that we had not put in, such as SSL over the RPC, or, a couple other things with the LLP, just little minor things, but nothing that we would say was critical or severe. As far as getting those completed, there was a couple, I know with the interface. Paul, you might be better at reading off.
Yeah.
Overall, it was a good report. Before Paul goes into that, I'll just explain the procedure that we're going to be moving forward with. So we had the call yesterday. We went through. We also are getting some reports on ways to prevent against keyloggers. Right now, the actual core itself, when you log into your node, actually encrypts your signature chain in the memory itself. So there is actually nothing stored on your disk or even in memory that can be read, even if there's a virus that can potentially be reading the memory. Some of the, other concerns of some people were how to prevent against keyloggers. Generally, a keylogger situation is only going to happen if you have a virus on your computer, in which case a current wallet.dat file would be just as vulnerable to a keylogger, if not more vulnerable. So don't think that a keylogger is any new type of threat. It's already a threat that would exist in the legacy code. But the thing that we can actually do, there's a couple ways that we can actually sandbox the process that Adrian was discussing with us. He's going to give us some more definition on that and help us with a basic report on that. That's probably not going to be something we'll release directly with 4.0, but we will be releasing post updates after that are going to improve those situations so that you won't have to rely on just hardware password managers to prevent against keyloggers. There's actual certain ways to, I think he said, run it in a secure desktop mode in Windows and OS X, I think the same, which is kind of the last, how should I say it, potential concern that we had with there being a virus on your computer, potentially stealing it. Like I said, a signature chain is much more secure than a wallet.dat as it stands right now. The only thing that can really get it is if you have a very, very weak password, which we're obviously going to prevent against when you create your password, or if somebody has a keylogger on your system, which is very, very slim for that to happen. And generally, as far as I've seen, they're not used as much. Mostly people are, with viruses are actually looking to steal the wallet.dat files. So with there being no wallet.dat file anymore, that should help improve a lot of the security characteristics, along with the actual username, password, and PIN number being encrypted in memory. I actually wrote a special encrypted pointer, which was pretty fun to do, which actually does encrypt it inside the memory because it is possible for another process to try to read that. Currently, the legacy code or Bitcoin or any variant of the sort does not encrypt these things in memory. Your keys actually are decrypted in memory when you're running. So if you have a running process and there's a virus on your computer, they are still able to steal that directly out of the memory. So this is an improvement on the security model along with increasing the usability of that. So we are happy to hear that there are some other ways that we can help prevent against these keyloggers, which will continue to improve the security of signature chains, along with some other minor adjustments. So what we're going to be doing this week is, I think today is Wednesday, so by next Wednesday, they're going to be doing a final audit over it, or just a reassessment. We call it based on the current vulnerabilities they found. They're just going to retest it, make sure that everything we have done is working correctly and that there is no more potential vulnerabilities in the code. And then from that date, that's going to be the kind of final seal of approval. And we're going to continue in testing mode and release the actual release date and mainnet activation timestamp after that point. And that's when we're going to have absolutely everything wrapped up. Right now, we've just been in kind of wrapping up mode for the last few months and debugging and testing and debugging and testing and hardening it. So there hasn't been an addition of very much new code since about June, since we did the code cutoff. So a lot of the code that we have right now is actually heavily hardened and very heavily debugged. And we've written quite a substantial amount of unit tests as well as we've done live tests. So everything we're pretty comfortable with the way things are moving. It's a little bit of a crunch for us over this next week, as you can probably see on Paul's face. We're all dreaming about code. But overall, we're really happy with the results. It was nothing significant saying, oh, well, this is going to bring, massive drama and trouble and anything like that. Just a couple little things. A lot of it was in the interface too, with sandboxing the modules. They did bring up some concerns on that and said that that's going to be a bit of a struggle. But I'll turn it over to you, Paul, to kind of read off the list of what you feel. But last point to say, we will be publishing this report after they have completed the final assessment, so that everybody can review it for themselves and do a little bit of learning, or if you want to see kind of their feedback on the Tritium code, it'll act as not only an audit for security, but it'll also act as kind of a third party verifying the quality of the code if any of you are interested or would like to see that. So I guess I'll turn it over to you now, Paul.
Yeah, sure. So you'll see this when we publish it next week, but they came back with 5 vulnerabilities, of which 3 they assessed as high, 1 as medium, and 1 was informational. Of those issues we have resolved, I think we either have resolved them already in release that's already gone out, or we will do very shortly. So the ones that I can tell you about were things such as not releasing MD5 hashes of the binaries that we released. So it gave the public no way to ensure that what they were running was what we had built. And that would, that issue was exploited earlier in the year with the GitHub attack, where a modified binary was uploaded. So that one's already resolved, for example. There's a couple of issues that I can't give the full details of yet because they are in the current wallet that's out there, but it is to do with the sandboxing of the module store. Although people are not installing any third-party modules yet, so it's not really an issue. It's just that there was a way that they managed to install a module that they had built and have that module access paths outside of the sandbox that they should have been working in. So, but that's fine. We've already resolved that. We just need to release that. There's some. One of the medium ones was to do with anti-DOS on our RPC and API servers. We just need to do some rate limiting anti-DOS stuff on there, which that's fine. That's already in and resolved. It's just not released yet. And then there was 7 or 8 what they determine as strategic weaknesses. So things like the dependencies, the high number of dependencies that the wallet UI is using, and that gives us increased risk. So we've been working to reduce those dependencies. Things like having the RPC and API server listening on all interfaces, which we've resolved that with whitelisting. There's a few other things like that that I don't need to go into the specifics of, but yeah, you'll see them all next week. But the positive thing was that at this point in time, we have either resolved them internally, or we will resolve them within the next day or two. And there's nothing on there at all which is going to cause us any delays in getting Tritium out. Partially that's because ISE, the company who did the assessment, were giving us interim reports over the last month or so. So we've had a chance to catch up and get some of these things done already. And partly because there was nothing really major there, which is just great news. What's worth mentioning, though, is the level of detail that they went into, the scope of the assessment. So they were looking for attack vectors and vulnerabilities in the UI and the daemon code, but they didn't go as far as looking into our consensus rules. So they did analyze our code for things such as our cryptography, how passwords are being generated and used in memory, and all those kinds of things. But they didn't go through our consensus rules. That was just out of scope because we had to draw the line somewhere to balance the cost and time of getting this done. This is an ongoing relationship we have with ISE. We want them to continue to analyze our code, and the part of that will be them looking at our consensus mechanism. That will be sort of the next stage that we will agree with them over the next month, 2 months, whatever it needs to be. And they're also proactively helping us come up with some tools that we can use, we can write to help us find some of these threats ourselves. So, for example, Dave suggested that we create some fuzzing rigs. Fuzzing is a mechanism of throwing random data at systems to try to get it to break, basically. The attack that happened on the network just a week ago, which we'll come on to in just a minute, that may have been found with proper fuzzing techniques, for example. So they're giving us advice on some of that, and as Colin's already mentioned, they're giving us advice on what we can do for like anti-key logging and things like that. So yeah, we've got a couple of things that we need to resolve within the next day or so. They are then going to retest the specific vulnerabilities and weaknesses that are not already resolved, just so that they can put a tick box next to all of them and say, yeah, we've seen that this is now working. They should be doing that next week, and it won't take them long to do, at which point they're going to give us an updated version of the report that we already have, with the tick mark next to them to say that they're resolved. And at that point, once we're happy that the code that's open source and public has those fixes in, then we can release that final report to you all. So that's where we are. We're pretty happy with the outcome, and it's, as far as we're concerned, it's a green light for us to continue with the Tritium release. Is there any questions from anyone at that point on the audit before we move on?
No questions. That's good. I guess anything else we really need to update on? I mean, I'm working right now. One of the reasons there's been a delay on getting Bittrex up is because they have a massive wallet data that's 2.5 gigabytes. And there's a bug that I'm working on actually as we speak to get them migrated to a 3.03 node. Binance did not seem to have that issue. But so they're back online, but Bittrex is being a little slow. So bear with us on that. This is fortunately an opportunity to get this taken care of now, because when they update to 4.0, they're going to need to be on the full Tritium code base. So if there's any further delays, I apologize for that. This is a bit of a nasty one I've been kind of chasing in. I was able to at least replicate it on my local computer, which is lucky and fortunate, but it should be resolved within the next day or two maximum. So we will definitely keep you up to date on exactly when that happens as well.
Yeah, do we need to talk any more about the inflation attack, the attack on the network last week?
I think we were pretty explicit in the document, but we can just summarize it pretty quickly. The Tritium nodes were unaffected. That's what alerted us of the attack. It was due to them pushing a version 2 block. The version 2 specifically omits the checking of those rewards due to a bug that was experienced back in 2014, which basically moved us towards version 3. I don't know if any of you are still around back in those days, but there was an issue as far as a rounding issue. So they exploited that by the logic missing checking versions previous. So generally in programming logic, you check either less than, equal to. I'm sure you guys basic mathematics understand that it was doing equal, or it was checking equivalence of the version minus the current version rather than less than or equal to. And so that is what they utilized in order to do the inflation attack. They created 1.5 million Nexus, of which 142,000 were lost to Binance, which we discussed on the call that we, over the period of time, we decided to use some of the unclaimed funds to cover that with full decision to continue to honor any fund recovery requests. Consider that somewhat of a buffer based on low financing and low budgets right now. So if there's any requests that go over the amount that is left, we will continue to honor them. So do not feel like your funds will be lost. It was just something that we utilized as a buffer, also to maintain a good stance with Binance. It also ended up, ironically, creating a stronger relationship with them. Since we have quite a good relationship with the people inside, they were really impressed with our reaction time and our ability to resolve the problem, and also to take care of what needed to take care of. Where I think in other instances, maybe they've had experiences otherwise. So we ended up turning lemons into lemonade in that process, which was good, which does give us, higher chances of, building a better relationship internally, which could help us with getting further listings with further markets. So we'll keep you guys up to date on that. So, overall, I guess, when you have situations that happen, turn lemons into lemonade. We've seen a few attacks over this last year, unfortunately, all stemming from the legacy code, which is a difficulty that we've been straddling, being that we've pretty much rebuilt all of that code and resolved a lot of these issues, such as the attack that happened in January. That was Tritium nodes were unaffected by that one as well. So we have decided, in light of that, to completely deprecate support for 256 or all variants of that. So if you are using a Qt wallet, we strongly discourage you to use that due to its security properties being unknown, with the fact that Tritium has been under development and testing and had eyes on it for a number of years. And we just concluded a security audit in it as well. So we can be sure that the code that you're running right now doesn't have any of these apparent vulnerabilities. So I guess it's kind of a little bit of a bittersweet situation. It means that we're definitely on the right track with the code that we have now. This exploit, like the one in January, was a logic error from 2014, unfortunately. So very, very old bugs. So thankfully those are out of the core in the Tritium code now, which is good. But we definitely highly recommend that you do not be running any of the legacy Qt anymore. Just due to safety concerns. There may be potentially other issues in there, but now that most of the network is upgraded to Tritium, we're very confident that we will not be seeing these types of attacks again.
Yeah, the frustrating thing about that was that had Binance already updated to 3.0, there wouldn't have been an issue, but it was just an easier path for them to go to 256 and so they were on 255, to stay on that rather than move to 3.0. But oh well, it's done now.
We were hesitant to get exchanges on 3.0 so early because we just dealing with large UTXO sets, we didn't want to deal with potential bugs running into that. But unfortunately, unless you have a wallet that big, you don't run into those types of bugs. So it ended up being a good situation to just accelerate the support of the Tritium wallet. So Binance now, it's going to be a seamless update for them to go to 4.0. The only logic issue that we're having currently is the decision of exactly how their address system, because you will be able to withdraw to a Tritium SigChain account or a UTXO since we support both of those in Tritium. So we're working on that logistics issue with them to make sure that it's as smooth a process as possible. We're considering just encoding addresses in base 58 like you're already used to, with just a different number in front of it. Instead of a 2, be like a 4 or an 8, which is, I think, segregated witness addresses work for Bitcoin, which I think will probably be the most seamless. Otherwise, everything under the hood is done the same, so that They won't have issues upgrading to the Tritium protocol, and you'll still be able to interact with your SIG chains and your UTXOs.
Yeah, just before we answer those questions, I know a couple have just popped up. Yeah, just to make.
How long is Nexus funded for at the 20-cent range? Well, the way that we work right now is the organization runs as remote contractors. So it's actually very fluid by the way I've designed it to be able to handle the volatility of the market. So last month we were cash flow positive even in the 20-cent ranges. So we're funded for as long as we need to be funded for. We have a very dedicated team too. So once a month, at least in the United States, we have a budget meeting and we set the budget for the month of how many hours we're going to be able to allocate to each individual. So essentially we've created the organization as it stands now to be extremely adaptable to any changes in market conditions. So as it stands right now, we're self-sufficient, and it hasn't required any funds from me. I'm on 304 CLI without problems so far. Thank you for the feedback. 304 has been very stable. We're working on a 305 as well. There's a couple bugs, but 304, we resolved quite a few. So I'm glad to hear that feedback. The Tritium CLI itself, running legacy, has been under testing. I think we first started deploying it on mainnet in January. So that's about 8 months worth of mainnet deployment. So we're confident that it's fairly well hardened, minus a few edge cases. So thank you for the feedback. And I guess, do you want to comment on the funding for you guys in Australia, 20-cent range? You guys are still self-sufficient at that?
Yeah, just about. It's because yeah. No, I don't need to go on it too much at this stage. I think with you guys, we approach it differently in Australia. I think in the US, as you say, you work out what the budget is for the month, and then work out what hours people can do. You know how many hours people can pay for, and therefore the workload goes down as the budget goes down. We're not doing it that way, at least not with Christo Key. Sorry, but you guys know him as Christo on Slack. We're keeping him at the hours that we think he needs to, and then with me, I'm employed, so it's a salary as opposed to contracted hours, and I'm just drawing what I need to. If the funds go down, so there's not enough left, then I'll defer till later. At this stage, we just want to get Tritium out, so I'm not really thinking too much about salaries and things like that. I just want to get the work out, and we'll figure that stuff out later. But no, we skipped ahead because I wanted to make a point about the exchanges moving to Tritium before that got too off topic. If you don't mind, we'll go back to that. It was just to clarify that even though Tritium mainnet is coming out soon and people can start using their signature chains for additional security and all the other features that go with that, we are not intending for exchanges to move to signature chains anytime soon. They can do it, but it's up to them to choose when they want to migrate, so they can stay using the legacy wallet. That just buys them a heap more time to implement things properly. So what that means is we've had to straddle. It's almost like straddling two blockchains, the legacy UTXO model and the new accounts model. So what we've done is make sure that you can send from your signature chain to a legacy address, and it crosses that model boundary, which means that you can send from your signature chain to the exchange if the exchange is still using legacy, and that's no problem. And vice versa, when you do a legacy send, you can now send to a signature chain account, which means that you will be able to go to your exchange and do a withdrawal, and that's a legacy transaction, but it will still pop up into your account. So what that means is Binance and Bittrex, they will have a seamless upgrade from 3.0, 4, whatever it is they're on now, to 4.0 when Tritium mainnet activates. and they shouldn't have to do anything different just to continue running. But everyone else, we can choose when it is we want to migrate from our legacy wallets to our SIG chains. It's not something that's going to be forced upon you. The only thing that will probably force your hand is when Tritium mainnet activates. You will no longer be able to stake using a legacy wallet. You will have to stake using your trust. You'll have to stake using your trust in your signature chain trust account. So that will probably force quite a few people to move from legacy to a signature chain pretty quickly. And we're providing a command line, like an API method essentially, but it's just, you can use it just like the old command line RPC to migrate. So we'll give you a command where you can say, I want to migrate my legacy trust key to this signature chain, and it'll move those funds across for you and maintain your stake rate. So that's all coming. Our plan from here, Colin sort of touched on the fact that next week we are going to be providing ISE with a release so that they can retest. Our internal plan is from Monday next week. We are going to be doing some further unit testing, and then we are going to be setting up a public testnet again. I know we had one earlier in the year, but we are going to set up what I'm hoping is going to be our last iteration of public testnet. And I'm hoping we'll start working on that on Monday, and probably look to get it up and running by Tuesday or Wednesday. And then once we do that, we'll announce that so you guys can join as well. So I don't know whether you're aware or not, but our testnet is not just testnet on or off. We now have a testnet number, and I forget what the last number it was we used, but we'll announce a new testnet number, and you just add that into your config file, and then it will connect to that particular version of the testnet. So we'll do that next week, and you guys can start playing with the Tritium features in a public testnet. How many UKCs are coming in the pipeline today? You want to field that one, Colin?
Yeah, so we have, oh gosh, there's quite a few. I mean, there's a lot of people that we're talking to. Then there's a lot, let's see, the for sure ones. We definitely have a really important for sure coming up. I don't want to give too many timelines, but I'll just go with the
don't think we can. Not yet.
Yeah, I just don't want to have any influence over the market. So we do have one that's for sure in the bag. We're just working out the legalities of the partnership. That's going to be coming soon. That's one of the big ones. Now UK definitely has some. We're going to be actually having business development, I guess, discussions. So I'm kind of a proxy here, but we're going to, I think the business development Zooms are going to be, let's see, next Wednesday. Don't hold me to, it might be the Wednesday after that, where Alex and Brian will actually get on and be able to give you those numbers of specifically. But I was just meeting with Brian today, and I mean, he had a page like this with like all the different things. So I mean, it's like raising a baby, or it's like growing a baby is what you usually say. To build these relationships takes 9 months to a year to get traction in high levels. And it's also, there's a lot of companies that are waiting for something to happen or waiting for somebody to go. So we have a pretty substantial amount of people we have talked to, and some of them said, well, when you have another use case here, let us know. So there's a lot of people that are waiting. There's also a lot of people that are waiting for the Tritium mainnet. There's also other ones that are waiting for us to prove ourselves, and then there's also ones that are actually ready to go. So that number, I couldn't really tell you the exact number. It's a little bit, I guess, vague of exactly. I mean, I know there's a absolute for sure that's in the bag coming relatively soon. And then after that, I'm sure we're going to have a significant amount of other ones. And then there's a lot of other ones that we're pretty deep in talks with, but I wouldn't say anything that's 100% confirmed. So we'll definitely probably get into a little bit more detail on that, as much as the business development guys feel is necessary to share, just because it is very sensitive, these types of things, especially with non-disclosure agreements, and also in the public facing eye, you want to be very careful about these types of relationships and how we act. And so I want to urge other people too, of the community, that when news of these things starts coming out too, to just be respectful of these relationships and realize that, you know, they're a relationship that we've all built together. Like I know there's been like action on Twitter at one point saying, you know, false things about NASA and Vector, which did not bode well for those relationships. So just keep in mind on that as well, to just be respectful of these relationships as they emerge, because they're very important, I think, to the growth of the ecosystem. You know, just like the code is important, just like the community is important. They're all different facets of it, and we're doing our best to try to blend these things together. As we've said before, there's this division in, where, you know, you have the ICO, Hyperledger, Ethereum business thing going on, and then you got the crypto anarchist thing going on at the same time, where there's this huge community orientation in crypto, but then there's also I guess a division with business people. So we're hoping to kind of help bring those together, especially in areas that are going to benefit things more than just having a good partnership. We focus on things too that are going to have longer standing benefits to children, to people, to the environment, things like that. So we are pretty selective too, with who we work for, or work with, I should say, for these specific reasons, because we definitely want to align the project, not just getting a partnership for the sake of a partnership, but aligning the project with the growth or the movement of where society is going, rather than just trying to get something to hype the project up. It's, you know, what are the people that are doing good things that are going to be the industries of the future, not the industries that are just going to always be trying to catch up, like the blockbusters. You know, you don't want to partner with blockbusters just because they were big at one time. You want to see further into the future and make sure that these are projects that are going to also survive and make a positive impact on society in general.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to add to that is that the kinds of businesses that BizDev team have been talking to are largely not looking at the size of our community, our market cap, or anything like that as a gauge to whether we can deliver or not. They're looking at the technology, and they are looking at what we can deliver. And that's why a lot of the use cases that could happen and should happen hinge on the mainnet delivery, not on whether or not it's functional right now. For example, the private mode could probably be used by a lot of these use cases right now without our, you know, they're not going to need our mainnet. And a lot of what we've been doing over the last few months is specifically to shore up the mainnet and handle the legacy to Tritium conversion and all that kind of stuff. Use cases that are using private mode don't need any of that, but they're not jumping on and using it right now because they're waiting to see that we can deliver the technology with our mainnet activation. And that's kind of the goalpost that we're shooting for right now. So yeah, and it's been encouraging to see that some of these larger organizations have evaluated Nexus against the giants, you know, the likes of Hyperledger, and determined that we were the better prospect because of the fact that we have a technology that's been written from the ground up with scalability in mind, and security as well. But you know, but we've been building it with future proofing in mind. And that's been, I think, the one thing that has held us in good stead against these larger organizations like IBM with Hyperledger and Quorum and Ethereum and all those other very large blockchains that some of these enterprises could be using. So yeah, I just wanted to make that.
It's also really important to build good relationships with people and maintain those good relationships and build these relationships on respect and honesty, which, you know, a lot of the business world isn't built on. So, I mean, the biz dev guys are very, very good at that. And they carry that respect forward, and they definitely build good relationships, which are also really important to these things too. People that, you know, they know that they can trust not only the people in there, but the technology as well. And, you know, the way that we have designed it too with the logins and the signature chain as well is another really important advancement over other ones, especially when you start looking into mobile supply chain management and things like that. You know, just the idea of storing a wallet.dat file or copying that or potentially losing that and corrupting a supply chain is just something that's, I think, kept a lot of people away as well. So we've definitely been making good progress. And I think I look forward to kind of getting the biz dev guys on the Zoom over the next week or two in order to just for you guys to answer questions and ask questions for them and them be able to answer, because they'll be telling you a lot of these things, but I think it sounds best coming directly from the horse's mouth. So what about getting on other exchanges for liquidity? Getting on other exchanges right now, I know there is a team of people that has been focusing on doing that right now. Exchange outreach is not a huge priority because we believe once you start getting more volume and more notoriety from building use cases, building community, we're going to start to see the natural picking up from other exchanges. But so that's not been a huge focus.
But they pretty much all want a massive dev fee, massive fee for
generally, yeah. And well, we'd like to see that happen organically because right now our market pool is pretty small. So, I mean, if you guys want to help us get on other exchanges, I mean, go out there on Twitter, you know, I mean, follow the Telegram and follow Slack because we've got, you know, a whole army of people that are starting to go out and reach out to people, start to drop Nexus, you know, tag the money cash sign NXS, tweet about us. I mean, I think our Twitter following has been growing substantially over the last, well, more than it has, over the last 2-3 weeks, just from some of the Twitter giveaways. And Telegram group grew by like 500 members in a week or two, which is pretty good comparatively, that we've seen kind of a decline in the community size over the bear market. So it's good to see life coming back into that. So, I mean, you know, Vyers and Numeris, I mean, power in numbers, it's all of you guys too that build that visibility and get more influencers and get more interviews. And, you know, that starts to spread and that starts building more awareness on it, which builds volume, and volume is what gets exchanges. Even if you do have a large dev fee to pay, that's generally an ICO tactic. If you don't have the volume to continue that, they're going to be less aligned to keep you on there. So right now, focusing on just Binance and Bittrex, I think is great, and just maintaining a good relationship with them. But I think as we start to get more notoriety and more of the network effect, we're going to start to see other exchanges just organically pick us up, which is personally what I would like to see, because the organic growth, I think, is a lot more sustainable than the up, down volatility you see with, you know, overhype and, you know, so. Dino is doing great. He's been working on Lisp. You can see some of his applications. Right now we've kind of like slowed down on the Lisp side of things because we're pushing that to a mean, because we're actually going to be kind of developing a different implementation than his that's kind of a trustless Lisp version. We can explain a little bit of that and how deeply ingrained that is in a mean. You're still going to be able to run Tritium with Lisp if you're inclined, but we're going to really start to ramp up a lot of that when we get to a mean. And that's where we're going to start to see a lot of that really cool functionality. And the entire network itself will become like one mapping system. So that's when we'll also be able to start getting a safe net and authentication and like login with Nexus and all that really cool stuff, which some of that could even come as early as Tritium++ as well. Great. Well, I appreciate the questions. Ace, you've been asking some really good ones. It's good. It's good for people to speak up and ask these questions because sometimes people don't necessarily know what to ask. So it's answering for everybody else. I guess anything else we need to go over, Paul? I think we covered.
I don't think so. This stage, I think I'm pretty keen to get some people helping out with the testnet testing from, say, the middle of next week onwards and through into the week after.
Yeah, we'll run that testnet until the mainnet activates. And just, I guess we can go over the upgrade procedure. Upgrading is going to be just as simple as downloading the new wallet, and you'll still be able to do all your legacy stuff. We're going to have the interface kind of broken into two types, where you have like your Tritium version and your legacy version. So you'll have kind of a hard switch up at the top, switch to the Tritium SigChain version and switch to the legacy version. Then also we have all the code in place for migrating UTXO over, migrating your trust key into Tritium. And then the way Tritium works too is it's your stake is actually locked in your stake account when you're staking. So if you actually remove any of that stake out of your trust account, you lose the trust associated with that. So that's going to create, I guess, a lot more of a savings culture. And then your rewards themselves too are actually transferred into balance. So you can spend your stake reward, but not the stake itself. So it's definitely pretty interesting and pretty cool how we've seen it evolve. Well, I think I got little critters that need to eat dinner and stuff. So anything else before we conclude? Any other questions? Or I think we covered it all. Yep. Well, thank you, Ace, for the great questions as well. We definitely appreciate that. We'll keep you guys up to date with the Bittrex wallet when we get that up. We'll publish the final report next week. Hope to have the biz dev guys, Alex and Brian, and then me and Paul will join there also to help kind of be support, because they haven't done too many Zoom meetings. So be easy on them if you guys have a lot of questions. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Then after we release the report, publish the report, and have everything fully polished, we will set the release date. As you guys know, our strategy has been to release the code or release the timeline of the code once the code is fully complete and ready to release and package ship, so that you're not struggling up to that deadline. And that has proven successful for, I think, the last 2 releases. We hit the deadlines on them. So this deadline we're going to hit as well. So we will set the release date after the audit results are completely finalized and we're ready to pack and ship. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you for the time as usual. Thank you for the good questions. And we'll probably keep this on a bi-weekly basis. And then we'll probably be seeing you next week. I'll confirm either next week or the week after with Alex and Dina, or it'll be Alex and Brian and me and Paul to go over the biz dev side of things, and hope you guys spend a little time to get to know them a little better too. All right. Cool.
Yep, cool.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.